The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
To Off the Ball Sunday's Nollaig special. It's Eve Conway here with you for the Sunday Paper Review. There's loads to get through, and I am delighted to be joined in studio by Orla McElroy, sports editor with the Irish Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. Orla, how are you this morning?
I'm good, thanks. Good to be here.
Perfect. And beside her in studio as well, we have Cliona Foley, freelance sports writer. And how are you today?
Great, thanks, Eve. Good, hanging in there.
Hanging in there. So is it still acceptable to say Happy New Year on the 11th of January? I'll wish you both a Happy New Year anyway.
Many happy returns.
Yeah. This might be the last
We'll
weekend
take
we'll
it.
get.
I think this is the last one.
Yeah.
You won't get away with it after this.
And I'll wish you a happy Nollaig, even though technically it's, I think, the 6th of January is the official date. But I guess here in Off the Ball Towers, we're celebrating it today.
That's quite all right, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's always good.
Day. Yeah, it's a great day to do it. Yeah.
So before we dive into the biggest stories today, I'm just going to run through the back pages quickly and begin with the Sunday Independent. And the Emperors Have No Clothes is the one that I'm seeing here in front of me, talking about Ruben Amorim and Manchester United. It's sort of odd to remember that he was only sacked on Monday. It feels a very long time ago now. We'll move on to that later on. The Irish Sunday Mirror have crystal balls up. Cup holders didn't see this coming as non-leaguers pull off biggest shock since 1909, and that is Macclesfield FC beating FA Cup holders Crystal Palace in the third round yesterday. Plenty to talk about there. Then the Irish Mail on Sunday, moving away from the football and going into the rugby, a Harry ending as Byrne's dramatic last-gasp penalty clinches victory for Leinster over arch-rivals Ronan O'Gara's La Rochelle last night in the Aviva Stadium. And the Sunday Times running with that as well, Byrne's night as last-gasp penalty gives them a nail-biting win. The Irish Sunday People are going back to the football with Supermac, which I like. The Silkmen produce shock of the century as they dump holders Palace. And then again, above that, Census. Schmeichel lays into United over Ruben Axe. I think all the papers carrying various ex-Manchester United players and their woes. Today, the Irish Sun on Sunday going Mac and Flies. Owner Rob vows to pay for I Beat the Holiday after heroic Silkmen kick out holders 117 places above them. And then finally, the Sunday World, who go with Ole's back at the United wheel. Solskjaer set for sensational return to Old Trafford dugout until end of season. Rumours flying around about that. So I suppose you may start with the football. And I guess the biggest story of yesterday also is probably the biggest FA Cup story in pretty much its entire existence, with the holders being knocked out by Macclesfield FC 117 places below them. People speak about the magic of the FA Cup a lot, and I suppose here's a prime example of it.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's an amazing story, and there was like plenty in the papers this weekend on Saturday as well about the owner Rob Smethurst and how he bought them. He's a guy who had, his own story is amazing before you even get to Macclesfield.
Absolutely,
he'd sold a business, a car trading app or something,
and one of those car sales.
Yeah, made huge money, and then sort of had not a lot to do with himself. Found himself struggling with alcohol. Off the back of a 4-day bender, went and bought the club because it was in receivership and closed down. And there's a documentary apparently, and he's walking around the grounds with, bits of grass coming out of the tarmac and broken seats, and he's trying to, open doors with this big bunch of keys he's got. He bought it on Rightmove, just bought it off a website. Yeah, and woke up the next morning going, I think I bought it.
Yeah. When you wake up the next morning, you wonder, what did I do last night? That's something to remember.
It's not one I've ever experienced, but yeah, it's an interesting one. But he said, like, I read a story about him yesterday, and he was talking about how, he had to tell the wife. Yeah. The next day. By the
Honey,
way,
I bought a football club.
Yeah. I mean, how do you explain that one? Like,
I know somebody who bought a very posh motorbike once and hid it in a thing for putting horses in, for about 6 months before he told his wife. But imagine telling you about a football club.
Yeah, there's no hiding that one. You can't hide that one away. Like he said, he was still in the doghouse over the 4-day bender when he asked his wife to meet him at the football club. I told her to just Google it and she'd find me. I was already in the bad books and she asked me what we were doing there. I said, I've bought the place. That was the final straw. We split up for a good 6 or 7 months.
Oh my God.
He did manage to patch up his marriage, and he's been sober for 5 years, and the club is going from strength to strength, as evidenced by, you know, what went on yesterday. But it's just a wild story.
I'm sure he's probably the only sober one out of that whole team now, celebrating last night.
For sure, yeah. And he's promised, as you said, to bring them to Ibiza on holiday to celebrate the achievement.
I want to be on that party bus.
Oh, can you imagine? Yeah, the crack. And the club are managed by Wayne Rooney's little brother.
That's the other.
Were you watching it? Apparently he was in tears.
Rooney was in tears at the end of it. It's an incredible story, and actually one of the papers today, I think it might be the Sunday Times have it. They have a gorgeous picture of them when they were kids, which is a really, really nice shot. And he was genuinely emotional about it yesterday, and he only took over the job basically because they couldn't get anybody else to do it. Like he's played a lot of football himself as well. This is the story. I mean, if the Disney boys are over, you know, making movies in English football, they're just going to love Macclesfield.
Because, I mean, they're a team that it's a phoenix club, really, of Macclesfield Town FC, who existed since 1874 until 2020, when they, you know, got into financial struggles. And then this miraculous story of a 4-day bender rescuing the club. So
it's a Sunday Times Eve that has that lovely photo, actually.
Oh, brilliant.
It's John, he's when he was 7 and Graham the 10 and Wayne is 12. It's a really cute photo as well. And it's just about how they compared and what they've done with football in their lives as well, because John had a really good career as well. But the interesting thing about them as well, and it's a theme that pops up in a few stories as well, is that the club has had terrible tragedy this year as well.
Oh, yeah.
So they had a player who was killed in a car crash, who John had brought into the club as well. And his parents were there yesterday. And this very often happens, I think, when you get these kind of stories that they're with an underdog team where there's some awful tragedy that has motivated them, and I think that's probably been a factor with this team, definitely.
Yeah, there's definitely that emotional bond. Like John Rooney talks about, he's quoted in a lot of places in you know, post-match he was talking about it. And he said, so as you said, he's a player he brought in, but
Ethan McLeod,
yeah. And his parents, Gillian and Gordon, were at the match to watch it, and they were in the manager's office afterwards. And John Rooney talked about how it's the hardest thing I'll ever have to do as a manager, and how I did it, I don't know. It ripped through the club, me, the staff and the players. Ethan was a special lad and a special talent. We spoke about him being here with us, and I didn't want to say too much to the lads because I didn't want to put any extra pressure on. It was only just a week before Christmas he opted to drive home from a game rather than taking the team bus, and it's
it was a terribly tragic twist to it.
And could have been devastating for the whole club.
Yeah, and I think you could see that in the way they played yesterday. They were playing for the sky, you know, and that so often happens. All I could think of was the captain with the bandaged head after a split in the head. He was like Willie Joe Patton, wasn't he? With the thing, and like everything about it was just like it was like Disney wrote the script. Really, I mean, okay, Palace are where they are at the moment, and okay, they were the reigning champions. I mean, the FA Cup is not what it used to be. That has to be said. And beating the holders of the FA Cup in some respects is not the same as it would have been many years ago, but this is probably, you know, it is a story for the ages, really. And as I said, I can see it. I can see somebody making a Netflix will be onto this one, definitely. If they get a chance.
There's going to be another one of those. It's Portsmouth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Michael Eisner has bought the ex-Disney CEO has bought Portsmouth.
Yeah.
You've Wrexham doing it.
We know the interest is there, and they love the romance of these stories. And now that you've got the Rooney factor as well.
Yeah.
It's just, it is made for it,
Yeah, you can kind of tell when you saw how emotional Wayne Rooney was getting after, you know, speaking to his brother about all of that, the family feel that these smaller clubs have. I mean, the pitch invasion at the end, the owner was getting involved and everything.
It's fantastic. And just watching it, even like the pitch invasion, you were thinking of GA. You know what I mean? It had that feel about it, didn't it?
Yeah, there's a lovely...
the piece that actually Simon Mullock has a good piece in the Sunday Times, and he's saying... there's one of the players, he's a DJ. He's a DJ in his spare time. So, like, if they do go on that trip to Ibiza, they're even bringing their own DJ. But, like, it's just sometimes. I think one of them was a school. The guy who scored the goal was a school. First goal, I think, was a school teacher. Like, they're a real mix of everything. You know, it is like your classic old school FA Cup story.
Totally. And it is, and you know, because it's such a small club, you can imagine like everybody's mucking in together. You can imagine the manager will be there helping, you know, get things sorted in the morning. And there's lovely pictures in the Mail spread.
There's great photos there.
The captain,
Look at
or the defender, Sam Heathcote, just grabbed a pint off somebody and downed it after the match. And the the pitch invasion, which, as you say, is like a proper GA old school
like
pitch invasion. But there's a great line in this that so Wayne Rooney on the coverage, who was saying, you know, about how he was getting emotional and to see his brother achieving this. He had flown back from Barbados on Friday night, breaking up his family holiday to come and see the game.
To the kind of freezing cold temperatures. You could see on the pitch even, it was a bitter day.
Yeah, it was.
And, you know, you get the sense that this is an environment that the Macclesfield players, you know, it's their home turf. They know how it's going to go. And Palace, when you think of their FA Cup victory last year, that was sort of seen as the magic of the cup. They're beating City, this huge financial juggernaut of a club. And here's little Crystal Palace winning their first major trophy. But when you zoom out in context, Crystal Palace, a Premier League, I assume you can say stalwart at this stage, and Macclesfield in the National League North. It's the first time ever the team in the 6th tier of English football has beaten someone from the top flight.
Wow. And they've promoted like from the Northwest Counties Premier Division. They've made it all the way to the National League North.
I know everyone always says, "Oh, the FA Cup's not what it used to be." I love these stories. I'm a sucker for them. I'm sorry, I'm totally romantic. I am a sucker for these kind of stories, and I think that they attract a lot of people who, and we'll talk about it later, are so sick and tired of the billionaires and the management systems that's now in football and all the data. It just puts the emotion and puts the real people back into football. I think that's why I still love the FA Cup for this possibility. Like, and it happened yesterday.
There was great clips of did you see the clips of the players in the dressing room afterwards, and they were all jumping around singing.
Well, they've sung that Adele song after every time they've got promotion. They sing this Adele song.
It was hard enough to identify. They're singing
exactly. I couldn't figure out what it was, and then I looked it up and something said it was one of the Adele songs.
But I mean, a more enjoyable result than, you know, looking at City beating Exeter 10-1.
There's a great footage, a crowd footage from some extra fans when they scored that one goal. They're just going mental. They're having a great time. I suppose, listen, for every Macclesfield, there's also an Exeter where you have a giant of English football. And no Erling Haaland on the score sheet though. And Semenyo getting his first City goal. So I suppose this is looking good for a team who are hoping to bring this form into the Premier League now and capitalise off of, you know, Arsenal dropping points. I think you can view it as dropping points against Liverpool the other week. So
that's actually touched upon in, I think it's in the Sunday Times where they talk about that.
Alison Rudd's piece. She's a good piece on Arsenal. I like her attitude too.
Yeah, she's kind of saying like, calm down. It's January, like, don't be panicking, you know. Arteta's kind of going, we're going to go again, and she's like, well, you only dropped 2 points against the champions. It's not the end of the world.
It's an interesting debate, and it'll continue about how Arsenal are finding it difficult to live up to the expectations now that the spotlight's on them. But her point is a really valid one, I think. What's the headline on it, Orla?
Arsenal need to chill out. A run of games away from home will do them good. And one of the pull quotes that they pull out, which is just, this sums it up for me. The only threat to Arsenal winning their first league title since 2004 is, yet again, Arsenal.
And her last part is, life is good for Arsenal, extremely good, if only they could start to believe it. It is interesting to watch. Like, it was interesting to watch them in that game, almost go back into themselves. You always, I think as an outsider, you think, how does that happen to professional footballers? This is their life. Their mentality should be strong. Why do they doubt themselves in this way? And it's funny how it seems to almost, okay, obviously Liverpool, you know, upped the game and all the rest and changed things. But you do wonder, how do professional players not have that confidence to drive on? And it should be coming from management, and obviously he's trying his best.
But it does seem quite fragile, doesn't it? Like, you look at, you know, how they are kind of, you know, you feel like they're not much going wrong away from a little bit of an implosion, and you wonder if City do start to find form, is that going to put enough pressure on that they'll, you know, suddenly just capitulate? You know, like Liverpool's loss of form during the early part of the season and how they were playing, and I mean, they still haven't really righted the ship, but there's a big confidence question there as well. It is interesting that they're not infallible to it. And I always think we expect them to be infallible, and I think the amount of money that they get paid and everything else that surrounds it now means we all, but they're still terribly human and fallible. You want a few GA managers in there, explain to them about the hunger and what it is they need to get in their heads for these matches.
Well, there was a great line in a piece yesterday about the new Cork senior hurling manager, O'Connor, And there was I'll get the name of the journalist who wrote it in a second. He said, there's a recurring tendency when replacing managers in all sports to go for a successor that is markedly different from the man before him. That's why you will have read in recent days of Manchester United's determination to find a manager that fits within their elaborately malfunctioning managing system. The next guy, the briefings vow, will toe the line the way Ruben Amorim wouldn't.
Shane McGrath kind of touched on that today as well, didn't he, in your paper, Orla?
That's the one,
that
isn't it?
notion, isn't it, as well? This thing of, it's a great line, really. He's saying nostalgia is proving United's toughest opponent, and nostalgia. I hadn't even looked at the piece that was below it, and in my own head, I was thinking about rugby from last night and today, and I was thinking, Munster have a terrible problem with this. And then I looked down and it says Munster still hampered by systematic issues. And he said another institution governed too much by the past is Munster Rugby. In fact, there are a few better Indigenous examples. But this notion that, you know, one, that your future is based on how successful you were in the past, and two, that it's based on the manager who brought you that success in the past, it just seems to me to be such a laughable notion in some ways in modern sport, given everything else that's involved now. And this whole managerial shake-up that we've seen, and all of them rows about money, and the papers are full of it today. I mean, it's in every paper from every possible angle, and we'll talk about them in a minute.
It was Shane McGrath who
yeah,
made
but
that
Shane
point.
McGrath has that great line, because he says he talks about the debilitating effects of nostalgia. It's a life source for a team's support in all sports, the glories of yesterday, you know. But he said that it has the potential as well to stymie everything. And this notion then that you have to, the next person up has to be radically different from the previous one, you know. And obviously Ferguson, it's all been talked about during this week about how Ferguson still stalks.
Hanging around like a bad smell.
Hanging around stalks Man United, yeah. Well, and your man's notion said, well, I had to check with Ferguson if I should take the job.
That was ludicrous.
I mean, that is ludicrous, Fletcher.
Yeah,
So that's like, but that kind of really... But there shows that Ferguson is still hanging around like a bad smell as well. But it also, it does bring into question, I think, this whole thing that how do you go forward and stop looking back, and where do you go from here for them?
And that's, I think, Shane McGrath points it out. It's been a problem with United. It's not a new modern day problem. I mean, you look at the early years of Sir Alex Ferguson. Says United at their best under Alex Ferguson still venerated the memories of the Busby babes.
Yeah.
So it's almost like every era is still harkening back to another one, but at least Sir Alex Ferguson was given the time and the resources to build something at United after a shaky start. Whereas you look in the, was it 12 years now, or 13 years since Sir Alex Ferguson departed Old Trafford, they have had 10 managers in that time, a few cups, a Europa League. But I mean, what we're seeing now is ex-Man United players voicing all sorts of opinions.
And they have in my opinion, they have an unduly huge influence on the conversation about professional football and about Man United, because so many of them are
former players.
It's like you know, it is a very unusual relationship that's there. But like Shane pointed out in this, he was saying that they're looking to go back to Solskjaer, and he says Solskjaer refused to park in the spot designated for the manager of the training ground, telling staff it felt like Ferguson's. So if you're bringing him back in and that's his state of mind, where are you going? They do need somebody who comes to this with a fresh view and a fresh eye. Then you also have the complications of players. Who are players going to respect? Who are players' agents going to respect? I mean, this is not what Ferguson had. Ferguson didn't have to deal with an awful lot of this.
No, it's a completely
layers
different
of management
world.
and layers.
Different
universe.
Completely. There's a lot of coverage of that across the papers where it talks about how, you know, that world is absolutely different. And, you know, as you said, Ferguson was given a lot more time. There's no way a manager would get that now. It just wouldn't happen. Liverpool did this as well with the boot room days, and they venerated that past, and, you know, they were beholden to it for long enough. Like, United were so beholden to Ferguson that and Roy Keane is 100% right about that issue with Rock of Gibraltar was you know, the horse that broke that club's back. And it was Ferguson as well who recommended Moyes. You know, he's had a huge amount of influence, and you can't say that since his departure it's been for the good.
No, and speaking of Roy Keane, there was Mark Gallagher in the Mail on Sunday speaking today about, you know, is Roy Keane the man, or is that a bit of a mad suggestion to even bring Roy Keane's name into the conversation for?
I think that's
interim.
Mark was certainly suggesting that, like, you know, the idea originally came from Jamie O'Hara.
Yes.
And as Mark says, he is morphed from a former celebrity reality TV contestant into a bespectacled pundit. But as the week wore on, more serious and reasoned voices such as Danny Murphy were suggesting the only way to make Manchester United a proper football club again is to get Keano to whip the dressing room into some shape. You can imagine him going in there to whip them into shape. But he talks about, you know, O'Hara and how he says he was on an early morning show where a number of highly strung United fans sent in their own take on the latest crisis at Old Trafford via voice notes. So there's no reason to take what he said seriously. Murphy, on the other hand, who had plenty of battles with Keane in the centre of the park, is a whole different story. He should know better.
We'd kind of agree.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and he lays out the reasons why it's just not a great idea. And Keane himself seems to have let this go.
has clearly not interested. And also, and again, we see it in several pieces today, including a very interesting piece in the Sunday Business Post. Keane is also making such a good coin now. Why would you want to go back into management?
Absolutely.
You know,
You imagine
you're
there's a
making
lot less
coin.
pressure.
You're making coin for people who love you, who tell you how brilliant you are constantly every 2 seconds on Twitter or whatever they're calling it now. Why would you want to go back into a pressurised situation? And you know, the sale of that podcast now, it's been bought over by one of this big European. Neville's company has been bought over by one of these big European radio stations. So they figure now that it's going to get even bigger. And Keane is right in the middle of all of that.
Absolutely,
and so there's absolutely no reason for him, financial, I think, emotionally or anything else, to go back into management.
I think Keane actually had one of the more reasoned views on what should be next for Man United. He's suggesting Eddie Howe.
Yeah, and he has been mentioned a few times, yeah.
Now, whether Eddie Howe would desire at all to leave Newcastle, there still is this, and I don't understand it, this view that Manchester United is a job you can never turn down. And I think that was Ruben Amorim initially wasn't interested in the job, and then they said, well, this is the only time we're going to offer it to you, and he left mid-season to join this team. As somebody who was very young myself when United were winning league titles and Champions Leagues, even then I still have this idea of Man United as this kind of very imposing figure in English football. But if you take purely the last 10 years, are they still a team that a manager like Eddie Howe would be bending over backwards to want to go to?
Well, that's the question. And would it be, like, it is a bit of a heritage thing now that, you know, they're the biggest club and it's still the biggest job. And you hear people saying, well, it is still the biggest job. Of course it's the job you're going to. But I just don't know. I mean, there's a great piece in the Sunday Times where Jonathan Northcroft goes through the death of the manager. And it talks about exactly this. What is a manager's role now? And we had that thing where Amorim came out and said, I came here to be the manager, not the head coach. And sorry, buddy, but
technically that was your title,
the manager.
And that was your title.
Yeah, you were recruited as a head coach, and that is the role that you play now. You are not a manager in the way that we understood managers to be back in the days of Alex Ferguson and, you know, Jose Mourinho running Chelsea. Those guys were all powerful and were across everything and on top of everything. They organised the recruitment of players. They picked the players they wanted to buy. That doesn't happen anymore. So would you go from, you know, and there's been discussion about, like, Unai Emery is another name who's come up, where people are talking about him going, well, this is, you know, it's the opportunity to go to Manchester United. But when you consider your working conditions and what you're dealing with, are you not better off staying at Aston Villa? And he believes he can do a better job there.
They're third in the table. I think people are leaving them out of a conversation. They're level on points with Man City.
And again, that goes back to the heritage idea of, you know, if you get a reputation for getting up early in the morning and you can stay in bed all day, people have this notion of Aston Villa as a small club and they have a notion of Manchester United as a big club. Yeah. But, like, look at Manchester United and Spurs last season. And
I think traditionally ego does come into it. I think if you're in the world of that
has to be the reason.
If you're in that world, I think if you know, and you're offered a job like Man U, your ego does go, wow, you know, heritage, legacy. I could be the one to turn it around. There's definitely that in it, and like it has been pointed out as well, like it's not like they're bottom of the table. They're just not where they used to be at the moment. We were having this discussion outside, like there's a great piece, this Jonathan Northcroft is a really good piece. I haven't seen the video, but he says that their 1958, this fans group have done this brilliant Queen at Live Aid thing where they've got the three lads is singing a Queen song. Is this a real club or just fantasy? So I have to go away and see that. It's definitely worth having a look at. But it's all about his piece is really interesting, and it's all about, and we were talking about outside earlier, this thing of the notion of where do you fit a manager and a coach in with director of football, which has now become the prime position to have. And then on top of that, you've got the layer upon layer of owners, absent landlords, accountants, data people, social media people, whatever else it is you want to be. So that's a piece well worth reading, I think, because it kind of crosses all of the different ones that's happened during the last few weeks with Chelsea and Celtic and all the rest.
It covers a huge amount.
And then the other piece today then is Eamon Sweeney's piece, and also in the Sunday Indo. And then also Rory Smith has a great piece as well in the Sunday Indo. It's an Observer piece, and it's a brilliant piece as well. And that's when he's pointing out Chelsea were 5th and United were 6th when both of those managers were dismissed. So I was saying, like, he said they didn't lose their jobs because of their failure. Because of their failure, they were roughly where they were expected to be this season. Why they lost their jobs because their failure to understand the parameters of their role. And this is the big question.
And how to work with their directors of football.
Yeah, and the delineation between all of these jobs. The Emperors of New Clothes is the headline name is Sweeney PC, as you referred to it, and it's a great one. And he's just, they use the phrase chief clown and circus. That's the whole Man United team that keeps running this weekend. But it is everywhere, this notion that, as Eamon Sweeney says it, and it really drives him crazy, this notion that the ability to make lots of money in one sphere is an infinitely transferable skill, underpins both the arrogance of the likes of Radcliffe at Man United and Dermot Desmond at Celtic and the deference with which they're treated. A golden age of rich guy hubris is reflected in the way that oligarchs run their football clubs. Chelsea have burned through 16 bosses in 19 years, Spurs have had 9 in 13 years, and United 8 in 12. The data suggests that the managers may not be the problem. And I was saying to you think all the time about money and governance. In Ireland, the governance in sports is a very serious topic and take it very seriously. But actually, I was thinking this morning driving in that somebody needs to design a course, one of these great management courses that they do, but it actually needs to be about football, because they're all applying business models to football. But actually, the model can't apply anymore not because the players are too powerful or the managers aren't good enough, but actually because the people who own the clubs don't apply their own rules to the clubs because they don't give you enough time to achieve the job. So you don't get what you would get as a CEO of a major company. You don't get 1 or 2 years to turn a company around. You get, in some cases, a couple of months.
And then how much interference do you have from above? Like you've
also
got, take United, for example. You've got like Jason Wilcox apparently telling Ruben Amorim how to pick the team. You've got Omar Barada. You've got Ratcliffe apparently weighing in on, I think you should, consider playing him at left back. Like
Brian and Wemo, your star kind of forward who you bought during the most recent transfer window.
Why employ? What is it? Why have a dog and bark yourself? Like literally, you pick. If he's not going to manage and he's not going to have the players to recruit and he's not going to have any say on any of that kind of stuff, he's going to put a team on the pitch. Let him put the team on the pitch, and don't be telling them that you should put Mbeumo in as.
But it is interesting that it so much of the reconstruction of football, if you like, and the money that's gone into football has come from business models.
Completely.
But actually those models don't fit because the premise that you give somebody a year or two in business, you pay them big bucks.
It doesn't happen.
You give them the time to produce it, and if they don't produce it then after several performance reviews you get rid of them. That isn't even happening in football now. It's out of control. Yeah. You know what I mean? You don't have any time to prove yourself.
And across a lot of those pieces, they talk about how, like, those guys who make the decisions, they don't get the performance reviews.
No,
they're not called
they're not answerable at all. Exactly.
About why exactly you picked Wilfred Nancy.
Because I never liked the book Moneyball, and he says the idea of applied statistics as a sporting panacea was popularised by the book Moneyball. And if it has not been discredited, he says it's certainly been questioned now. That notion of you can buy success if you have the right data and the right systems, but it takes so much else out of it, and your relationship with your players, all of that stuff. Surely that has to be as important.
We're going to turn our attention to rugby now. A big night at the Aviva last night with Leinster and a last gasp Harry Byrne penalty. Seeing them overcome La Rochelle. What a game.
It was great, wasn't it? And it's some great, I love Harry Byrne's name. It just gives some great headlines. All the back page headlines, the Byrne supremacy and, Byrne's night.
I don't know about you, but it restored my faith in professional rugby, honestly, because I've watched so many balloon ball as I call it, kicking games this winter. Just games of hunt and grunt and, just stick it up the jersey stuff.
Yeah.
But actually last night we got a game, and what a game we got, and a game that just moved. It swung so dramatically, and then literally Leinster came up and stole it. And the image of Sam Prendergast's face when Harry Byrne took the ball off him and said, "I'm going to kick this," and Prendergast had missed several conversions and wasn't kicking well, and then nailed it. It was just a brilliant piece of sporting theatre, and I'm interested. Shane McGrath, I thought, was very hard in your paper today on Leinster, saying so many questions remain about Leinster after this, but I thought the way they wouldn't quit, I think, and the way they defended at times, I thought was really admirable. And actually, no matter how they didn't score for ages. They got two early tries by Joshua, as he's now called, and thank you to Bernard Jackman for explaining in the end of that when he played for Presbray, he was Joshua, but he was JJ Kenny. Kenny. So JJ Kenny got his first two tries in the competition, but then they went scoreless for ages. But their ability to grind it out, you would have to say, was very admirable, and their defensive sets at times were just sensational.
Yeah, in fairness, it was great to see them doing it. Just what you're talking about being a good game. Rory O'Connor starts off by saying, "This competition doesn't deserve these two," and it's something that you've seen in the Champions Cup. They've made a mess of the competition. Jesus, there's people talking about how the competition doesn't even start till after Christmas. It's only when you get to the later rounds of this unfathomable pool stage system that they have. It was a brilliant competition. They could make it that way again, but you need more games between teams like this, not teams that are, finishing 9th in the pro, whatever it's called now. But yeah, so the fact that Leinster came back is definitely very admirable. That grit and that willingness to keep fighting. Now, La Rochelle did have a lot of things that they'll be looking back and not very happy with. You'd have to imagine.
Cocked it up one more times than they could remember. They threw away tries, literally.
Yeah, there was tries that should have gone in, and they should have been further ahead. And how it was only, 12-7 at half time? I don't know. But one thing that I think it's Bernard Jackman actually highlights is about the enduring fitness of the Leinster players, and to see Josh van der Fleer,
oh my God,
galloping down that touchline and going half the pitch,
like a winger,
and ducks inside and scores the try at the end of it. And La Rochelle were clearly feeling it at that point.
They were totally gassed. You could see it. They were blown badly. Yeah, I have to say Henshaw. I think he's one of the most underrated players in Irish rugby.
Josh van der Fleer for me is that guy.
Henshaw was sensational last night defensively. Every single time his head came up out of a ruck, you thought, how did he get where he got to? So that's where I'd be for it as well. I just felt, okay, they're not playing brilliantly. They're dropping balls, they're making mistakes. The first 10 minutes, Leinster looked great. They had that old fluency. Offloads were lovely. Then they went out of it. Then, oh my God, La Rochelle came back like lions in the second half, and you thought, no, this game is up. And they just wouldn't quit. And I think that's what I would take from that last night as well, was that they wouldn't quit. The only other thing I was saying to Eve outside is Frawley. I'd be worried about Frawley's injury, because he is going to be, I think, such an important player for Ireland if he keeps being as versatile as he's being.
Yeah. But it's good to see. I mean, Harry Byrne, playing as well as he did, and then the two wingers, Kenny. The way he took those two tries was brilliant.
Fantastic to watch.
Wasn't it? It was just so athletic.
And he was good defensively as well, too, when he needed to be later on. It's an interesting one. The Ireland 10 debate is going to continue as well, and the games today obviously will decide that as well.
Yeah, Munster, again, Toulon, they're playing in France. Now, Jack Crowley, it's a big game now.
It is.
You look at... for so long, it's all been this it's a two-horse race. It's very much not anymore.
No. And you've got, is it this week that Andy Farrell is going to name squads?
That's going to... I'm not sure if it's this week or next week, but that's definitely a talking point, and it crops up today. And actually, there's a good piece, I think it's Peter O'Reilly talking about in the Sunday Times.
Yeah, he talks
because
about
I think he's right. He's saying... Why will there be more Ulster players on it? Do more players deserve a shot from Ulster? And how many more could possibly get in? Because he's making the point that Stockdale now has made himself very valuable as a full-back. Tom Stewart has made himself very valuable as a hooker, and could he possibly displace Gus McCarthy, which is interesting, who's the third choice in
and
Leinster.
He makes a very good argument.
He makes a really good argument for it, and he makes an argument for several more as well. And I do think that we're going to see the two brothers whose father played for
Zach Ward and Bryn
Zach
Ward.
and Bryn Ward. I think those two are going to come into the picture as well.
Yeah.
So it will be really interesting. And given what they did to Munster recently, it's going to be really interesting to see if you're a Munster fan and you're interested in there's two featurey pieces today that might interest you. Peter O'Reilly has a piece with Nankivell, big feature piece with Nankivell in the Sunday Times, and then in the Indo, Cian Tracy has a very interesting piece with Antoine Fritsch, who at one point we thought was going to be an Irish player and was going to be, but he's injured at the moment. But if he wasn't, he'd be playing against Munster today, and it's actually a really interesting, nice feature on him as well. So there are two pieces that Munster fans I think will be interested.
Yeah, and Rory Keane talked to Alan Quinlan with a bit of a hark back to the glory days of Munster and back to
but they got to get away from that, Orla. They've got to leave that behind.
But they don't. They'll all be still turning out in those jerseys. Those jerseys you can see from the 1999.
the old jerseys.
You're going to see a lot of those in the crowd.
Alan Quinlan's looking very young in those photos, like us all. They all look a lot younger. And then actually also it's worth mentioning because it's a good little bit of a giggle in it as well. And Hugh Farley always gives me a giggle in the mail because he talks today. He just has one little opinion piece today on why Ronan O'Gara will never manage Leinster because he is, of course, too Cork.
Yeah, it's not the Munster thing. It's that he's too Cork.
It's Cork. It's not even Munster. Absolutely. Yeah.
Hugh's conclusion is if Ronan O'Gara took over at Leinster, no matter how well he did there, he would never again be able to walk down the South Mall, hang around his old haunts in Bishopstown and Wilton, have a pint in Barry's of Douglas, or go to a Cork Con match in Temple Hill without fear of bitter reproach. And that matters. It's not right or wrong. It is simply the way it is.
It's interesting he didn't do post-match interviews last night.
No.
And Donnacha Ryan did the pre-match one for
Donnacha Ryan did the pre-match,
well.
and apparently Ronan's French-speaking assistant came out after the match to have a chat with the lads. And then when they asked if Ronan O'Gara was coming in, they were told they were on the way to the airport.
Already on the plane.
They were getting out of there in a hurry.
I would say they were kittens kicked or boots thrown, or I mean they lost that game. They should never have lost it. I mean all the stats, you'll see them today in the papers, you know, La Rochelle were on top and everything, and yet, as I said, that's the way sport is interesting sometimes. But I thought it was a great game because it was just an open game of rugby.
It was dramatic. Yeah,
it wasn't a huge, Leinster moved them around, obviously they had to, and then obviously the La Rochelle forwards got on top, but it wasn't the bish bash bosh game that we thought it was going to be. There was much more open rugby in it than I thought there would be, and it was great.
Yeah,
good game. That's what you want.
This was a very beatable Leinster team in theory. Yeah. I mean, even though they've won the 3 out of 3 now in the group stage, I think the prevailing conversation after those previous 2 wins was, okay, they've grinded out this win, but this is not where Leinster want to be.
Yeah, and you still say that, Eve. You'd still say they made terrible defensive mistakes last night. They left acres of space at times, and obviously they were missing a lot of key players in the front row especially, and their bench was extremely weak by their standards, and they have injuries at the moment. But that's why I think Frawley at full back is just that's such an interesting thing that's going to happen. You know, that they need possibilities, because Hugo Keenan was so resilient for so long and never got injured, and he's so important for Ireland as well. But it will be interesting, I think, to see how this next Ireland team is picked, and Leinster's form and Ulster's form, how that's going to affect it as well. It will be interesting.
That Peter O'Reilly piece we were talking about, it's something that you think is applicable to Ireland as well, because he talks about how Ulster last season were having such a tough time of it, but what was going on was Richie Murphy was giving a lot of young players their time and their space to learn, and the ability to make mistakes and, you know, learn how to play in these bigger high pressure games. That now that, what did he say, they finished last season with a 5 consecutive defeats, slumping to a final position of 14th with only Zebre and Dragons beneath them. Given that Ulster now top all attacking metrics in the ORC, it's understandable that a lot of credit has been given to Mark Sexton, the attack coach who arrived in the off-season, but this rather undersells the contribution of Jimmy Duffy, an underrated forwards coach, and of defensive coordinator Willie Falloon, skill coach Dan Soper, and Murphy himself. And they do seem to be building something very good up there with a nice brand of rugby.
With the under-20. I think they worked with him before with the under-20s, because I'm looking at Ulster saying, these guys are looking good. What's the change? So I was really interested in reading that all those guys had been involved with them with the Irish under-20s, and that cohesion is being brought to Ulster as well now.
Because when you look back at the November series, as Peter O'Reilly says here, there were only 4 Ulstermen featured in the initial 36-man squad, equaling the province's lowest representation. You kind of feel like that would be, if you were to see that again, that's kind of doing a disservice to as you pointed out, Ulster now topping the attacking metrics in the URC.
Yeah, if you're going on current form, I think it is. This is always the debate, and this is the debate, the Munster-Leinster debate as well. As if you're going to go on form, it would be interesting to see if they get a bounce.
And there's an A squad as well, which is interesting because there's a lot of young guys there that you feel will really benefit from being included in that A squad and getting a bit of, it'll bring them into the environment and they'll learn from that what's expected for the step up to the senior squad. So look, hopefully, because it is nice to see a team playing a nice style of rugby, and that's, as we said, we've seen so many of these games in the URC where it's just deathly dull and horrible to watch.
Some of the rugby this autumn, some of the rugby was dreadful.
And it's like they're bringing out the worst in each other in the URC, and then you see a game like last night where Leinster, it was a bit of a different approach.
Yeah,
in that game.
they definitely went at them from the start to be much more expansive. Yeah.
So the new sort of format, and it's not really new anymore, of the URC, where you're not getting games perhaps of the quality that we'd see last night consistently. Is this almost hampering players' development? In a way, you're not playing as many high quality matches perhaps as you're used to, or is it a good training ground for younger players?
Well, I guess there's a backlog then, isn't there? Because there's a lot of people vying for that, like a smaller amount of games where they're going to get the high level experience.
Yeah.
Do you know, if you're looking at teams rotating a lot, in their games in the URC, because there's so many demands on rugby players now. That's the other thing.
And the physical demand on them.
Physical demands are huge.
That's why there's so many injuries.
Yeah, exactly. Leinster's injury list, the amount of players that you see missing and going out with injuries at any given time, there's a huge level of placed, what's needed on rugby players. So you do wonder if, like, less is more, but we're getting more because we're getting this rugby championship now next summer, aren't we?
Well, that's it. And there's a piece that made me laugh I think it's in the Indo as well. It's Gavin Mayers. It's a piece in the Telegraph, and it's sale tuna and the problem with rugby marketing, and it's just this notion again of people trying to expand the game but not quite knowing where the market is or how to change the market. But this guy Marco Mazzotti, he's the owner of the Durban-based Sharks, who are playing well. He's New York based, so he brings all this kind of American brash business thing to it. And he was slagging off Sale because they're also Sharks, and so he was kind of having this pun about a bit of bants, trying to bring in a bit of rugby bants into it. Exactly, we don't need the bants, but he's saying like, we need to. He's in favour of all of this new stuff of expanding the leagues. That more like a Champions Cup thing for rugby as well. And he's saying like, you've got to expand it for the fans. You've got to make it global, and you want to bring more of this marketing stuff to it. But you do look at it and you wonder. And he's like, he mentions Pollock. Pollock is mentioned in the article, and
he's the darling now, isn't he?
Well, you love him or hate him. I like him. I kind of like him because I do like. I do like to see a bit of individuality and a little bit of flair. And okay, he's in your face and he's very brash. And this guy is like, we need more Pollocks. We need to sell. This is how we want to sell it. So it's interesting to see where rugby is going to go, because there's definitely a pressure there from owners to make it a bigger product, make it a more worldwide product. But you have to have you have to have those kind of rivalries as well, I think, and that's what we saw last night. You have to have, the competition has to really mean something.
Yeah, and you can
and
sell it then on
and
that
Leinster
basis
absolutely hate each other now.
That's gone before. Like in that piece you were talking about, the sale piece, he talks about what they're doing on social media, and we added something like 250,000 followers last year, 50,000 just in December. What's the benefit of that?
Yeah.
Wait, tell me why that benefits the club. Like, are you converting them? If you're converting them into bums on seats.
If it's bums on seats, or jerseys sold.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I'd like to see the conversion statistics on that.
Because you have, I think, the Ulster Rugby TikTok account. They're getting players doing skits.
Okay.
And they did a Christmas skit a few weeks ago, and it's good to see, a bit of camaraderie in the dressing room, and it shows maybe a cohesion within the team. But at the same time, if you're wanting to grow the game, there's what I think will grow the game is matches like yesterday.
Yeah,
where people
exactly.
are going to want to go. I mean, we had Susanna Mullen reporting from the Aviva last night, and she was saying it's been a long time since she's seen an atmosphere like
The
that.
crowd really got behind them.
Yeah.
I mean, they were definitely the Prod Sandwich crowd were not there
They
last
stayed
night.
at home, did they?
There was 14,000 there and they were roaring last night. The atmosphere was fantastic, you're right. And I don't know whether you've ever been to a match in Ulster, but like I went to Women's International, actually went to Women's International there, and it's a gorgeous ground and it's made for that kind of, it builds an atmosphere. Ulster fans are very passionate, you know, and I think all of that. But we need good football. We need good games. And last night is the kind of game I think that would really make you watch. Whereas a couple of weeks ago, I actually just stopped watching UFC. I couldn't watch them anymore. I was like, I cannot stand watching another game of kick it up in the air. And these, you know, the new rules have definitely affected the way it's been played.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. So I think Leinster had to go for that last night, Orla, because they had to drag them around the field. They had to play an expansive game to try and make space for themselves, and it worked really well.
Yeah,
for a point, and then it didn't, but then it did again. You know, so
that's it. And maybe it was that thing of, you know, they knew they'd be stronger in the finish, because it certainly looked that way. That they looked like they were, you know, they had the physical resilience to last it out to more of a degree. Definitely, like their fitness levels must be really
but
high.
Botia last night was sensational.
Superb.
I mean,
given the
anybody who has seen that game, if you get a chance to watch it again, go and watch that game. Just for talk about levels of fitness for a big guy. He was sensational.
And like player of the match from the losing team, it's not often you see that.
You don't often see it. You're right.
And from not the home team either. You know, the fact that
exactly.
it was,
when it was the local TV coverage. Yeah.
So I guess just before we go for a break in a few minutes now, going just back to Harry Byrne and that kind of last minute penalty, the confidence that he showed in saying to Caelan Doris, I want to take this, and then the confidence that his captain showed in him to allow him to do that. Like, this is a player, he's still only 26, but was on loan to Bristol Bears like last season. I don't want to say confidence again, but it's the word that keeps coming to my brain, just how important it was for him to get this and for it to be this huge moment that all the papers are talking about.
Yeah, and they asked him about it on the coverage afterwards, and when they brought him over, and he said that he felt he had missed the previous one and he knew exactly what he'd done wrong. He said there was no wind, I just gave it a bit too much and that's why I missed it. So I knew I was going to get this one. But now he was fresher legs. So you assume there's a good reason for giving it to him. He had taken the previous one. So obviously that decision had been made that he was on the kicks. But Sam Prendergast certainly didn't look happy. But fair play to him. He took the decision last season to go and to go to Bristol. And like as Jonathan Brown talks about it in the Mail, he's talking about how like he had been deemed for a long time to be the other Byrne, with his brother Ross's shadow looming large over a player who had been a star at school level for St Michael's College. He was the starting number 10 for the Ireland under-20s. There was always huge hype around Harry Byrne. Like, we've heard it for years, Ross Byrne came out and played for Leinster and everybody was always, you hear this so often, but like, wait till you see the younger brother, he's going to be even better again. And it's taken a little bit of time. It took time for him to break through, and, there was always that thing of backlog at Leinster, right, in terms of the number 10s, and there was a perception that, well, you're better off being the third choice out half at Leinster than you are going elsewhere. But he took the decision to go to Bristol, and it was a chance call from the Bears to help out his cover because AJ McGinty was injured. He only played in 11 matches, but he said it had a profound effect. He talked about Pat Lam and the impact he had on him as a player and how he developed and grew from that time.
And I think too, Pat Lam, having come from Connacht, would have had that understanding of Irish rugby to deal with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Would have understood the pressure that he's on, the family thing, being under a microscope in Ireland and getting him over to Bristol as well. I think that there's an element there. Pat Lam is very popular. Was very popular as a player's man in Connacht, and I think maybe that has helped. Murray Kinsley did a really good piece this week as well, worth catching up on the 42 if anybody has access to that as well, on the intrigue around the Irish number 10 position as well, because Carbery now, the possibility the Carbery's going to come back to Leinster. there's a fascinating conversation, and he did a really good trawl through all the potential people who could come back into line, and actually Harry Byrne he had right in the middle of it as well.
And it would be some late career renaissance now for Joey Carberry to come back and, you know, force his way into that conversation as well. But then he's only 30, I think, isn't he?
Yeah,
Like, he's not...
When you think about it in those terms, he's still a very young man.
Absolutely, yeah. So for him to come back and go back to Leinster, and, you know, there is a sort of a perception he never really wanted to leave. Like, it was kind of, he felt he had to, for the sake of his career, to go.
Absolutely. And then Frawley, you know, potentially going to Connacht because that's the position he wants to play in.
He's been told he's there as an out half,
that's what they'll take him as an out half. And you have that. And then you have Carty as well. Like, you know, it got very polarised into just two people in the last season, but maybe there's more people to come. And again, isn't that what's going to be interesting to watch this season?
Yeah, I liked in the Mail on Sunday, Jonathan Brown just comparing Harry Byrne to Rocky, and that's
it's a good line
story. I think we can probably take a break at the moment, but we've got lots more of the day's sport writing after this. Welcome back to the Sunday paper review on Off the Ball's Nollaig special, where I'm joined by sports writer Cliona Foley and sports editor of the Irish Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, Orla McElroy. Now, we were chatting before the show, Cliona, about some pretty exciting, well, potentially WSL news.
Yeah, it's been doing the rounds for a while, and fair dues to the Echo in Cork were the first ones to break the story, the potential that Denise O'Sullivan is potentially going to sign for Liverpool in the WSL. This would be a massive story, I think, for Irish fans as well, because just the potential even to go over and watch her play in England would be fantastic. She's been in America for so long. She's been in America, I think, 8 years. She was briefly home. She was on loan in Brighton in 2020 for a very short spell. But otherwise, we haven't seen her playing in a what we'd call a local league, and we just don't have access to watch her playing for Carolina. We don't see her playing in America. And also for the Irish team where they are and where the potential is for qualification, she has to fly home for all these camps. And I always think it takes a bit out of her. Sometimes she just runs herself into the ground, and I think, Jesus, after making that trip, that's a lot to put on her. So if she was back, it would be brilliant. I just noticed with interest, this story broke just before Christmas that she might come to Liverpool. Mark Gallagher in the Mail on Sunday says, actually, you know, it looked like she was going to come, but it hasn't happened. And he says the story has kind of gone quiet in England. And I trawled some of the sites this morning, just the women's football sites, just to see if there's any heat on it. And it doesn't appear to be anything new breaking on it. But Paul Rowan on the front of the Sunday Times, he says, in his last paragraph in his piece on the front of Sunday Times, which is actually about Gavin Bazuma, he says she is completing a move from North Carolina Courage to Liverpool. You see, Liverpool are struggling desperately. Like they haven't won a game this season, right? And the Women's Super League is back. And thank you to the Mail on Sunday and the editor beside us today, because at least she carried a match report from Arsenal Man United yesterday, which I can't find in any other papers. So that's good to see, because there should be way more coverage really of the Women's Super League in the papers today. But they're just back from the break. Liverpool are struggling badly, and they have a really good Japanese player. I'm trying to think of her name. She's in midfield, Nagano, but she badly needs support with her, and they have a few people injured as well. They've got hit with a few ACLs. So to get us a player like O'Sullivan, who is not only a brilliant midfielder but actually really good defensively as well, and works her butt off every time she plays on the field. it would be a great get for Liverpool.
She's a
I
big
think.
Man United fan, though. Like,
Yeah.
is she going to go to Liverpool?
Yeah, but look, Katie McCabe wasn't an Arsenal. She wasn't originally Arsenal, was she? Am I right in thinking that?
I'm not sure.
I could be wrong. I thought her club affiliations were different originally. But look, I don't think it would matter. Like, if she's coming from America, I think they'd be prepared to pay good money for her. And
she'd be well worth it.
And she would be well worth it. And it would be a real boost to Irish women's football fans and also to Ireland fans as well.
Like, Mark makes that point that you made about, this long haul trip every time she's coming over for a camp or whatever. And there's a couple of, there is a couple of players over in the US, but it's so much easier for Katie and for all the players that are based in England, playing in the WSL and WSL too, because there's a lot of players there. But also, as you say, to go over, like, the amount of people that are going over to Arsenal games from here, it's incredibly good value. Like, the tickets are really great value. You get to go to the Emirates, and Mark highlights their average attendance.
Oh, there's a huge. It's 40.
They're the best supported women's club in Europe. Their average league attendance is 36,214, nearly 4 times as big as the second place club Bayern Munich, whose average is 9,365. Like, they're doing so much right. They've given Renee Slagers an extended contract
until
very
2029.
long term. Which is unusual in the women's game as well.
The coach is still very young as well.
And it's interesting, actually, you're talking about Irish fans going over to see Katie McCabe. I was in the Aviva for the last Republic game, and I was there with my niece and her kiddies and her husband, and beside them were 3 young women who had come, Arsenal fans.
Really?
They cried. They cried when Katie McCabe, when she scored that brilliant goal from the free kick, they cried at one point in the game, and my niece was looking at them going, they're insane. But they were insane, Katie McCabe, and they come to Ireland to watch her play for the Republic of Ireland. That's how big Katie McCabe is in England, and that's how big Arsenal are in England, And I just think Denise, and also it's the style of football she plays. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have Ireland players coming. We have some really good Irish players who come back from the American League as well to play for Ireland. But I don't think anybody covers every blade of grass the way Denise O'Sullivan does. And she can't stop herself. Do you know what I mean? Like, if she comes back and she's told, take it easy this game, we don't need you running she'll still do it. It's not her. She can't stop herself. So it is an exhausting thing for her. I was happy to see she was in Belize over Christmas having a very lovely holiday with her partner. So hopefully she's well rested. But it is interesting. And one of her instas before Christmas as well, she did say something like, nothing beats being home. She's quintessentially Cork and a home bird. Yeah. It'd be great if it happens. Anyway, I think definitely on our special Nollaig na Mán special, it's worth highlighting that story, because I think it's one that's people should be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and just in general, he does take a look at, like, the sort of a state of the nation. We've done one yesterday in the Saturday paper on the men's squad. So it's kind of where what's going on with the Irish players over there at the moment.
No, it's a good piece.
Those qualifiers are coming up soon.
Yeah, next month, and I think with all the drama around the men's team, and rightfully so, with the playoffs now coming in March, I think the women's team and their qualifiers for getting has sort of been pushed to the side slightly, or if maybe we're not talking about it yet, we will be, obviously.
Yeah.
And if we could get Denise O'Sullivan, if she's playing closer to home when we need her most, I think it would be huge.
I think we could only benefit from it. Exactly. Yeah, it's a good piece, because he has the 2 tables as well. He has a summary of the 2 Super League tables, 1 and 2, in that piece by Mark as well today.
I mean, you have Arsenal, who are Champions League winners now. Katie McCabe is Champions League winner. Yeah. And I feel like, I think Renee Slagers agreed when she said it really was 2 points dropped with that game against Manchester United.
Oh, yeah.
A bit of a dire 0-0. And with,
it was a bad 0-0
A bad 0-0.
Yeah.
There are certain bad 0-0s that you see every now and then, especially with United down to 10 men for a portion of that second half. So,
and it was put to her afterwards that, like, their problem is kind of, it's the accuracy rather than, like, their playmaking is good and they're playing well, but they're just not capable of finishing it off.
I think
she said that we just we need to put the ball in the net. It didn't happen.
You need to score. You need to score. And I think it's a problem for the Irish women's team as well, is that ability to just. We don't have an out-and-out striker. We don't have a killer striker.
That's why there was so much elation with that game the last day, because you were looking at it going, God, this is this is such a treat to see so many goals.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
It was brilliant, but it is something that definitely. both of the Irish teams really have had a little bit of a struggle with. I know Troy Parrott's come along and done wonders.
We need to find a female Troy Parrott.
We need to find, we need one of those. Or Leanne Kiernan, who's at Liverpool.
Yeah, who's at Liverpool.
She's a great goal scorer.
And again, if Denise came back even to Liverpool for Leanne, who's a natural goal scorer, as well, that would be such benefit for her as well, I think. Yeah.
Sure.
Definitely. I'd like to move on to a piece by Michael Foley in the Sunday Times about Katie Taylor.
Yeah.
We were speaking about this outside. A lovely piece.
Yeah, really nice piece. I was really interested in this. It's very unusual what Katie Taylor is doing at the moment. And so the question being asked is this the end? Is she going to continue? Is she calling time? Because she's never done as much public speaking and as many interviews and as many. But I was following. She did an audience with down in Killarney this week.
It was Friday night.
Friday night, and it got massive. Like it got a huge ticket sales. And I remember thinking, like, I've interviewed her over the years. I saw her box in the stadium the first time women were allowed to box in the stadium, girls were allowed in there. I've followed her career. I've been at the Olympics. I've followed everything. But like, she's not an easy interview. And my thing was like, how is Katie going to hold an audience there for that amount of time, paying good money? And it's a good piece by Michael Foley because he goes at it from that premise, and he wants he brings us behind the curtain a bit to see what happened at this thing. And she, there is no hyperbole about Katie. There never will be. She'll never go. She'll never do the big Muhammad Ali stuff. But what I was struck at, first of all, was watching the Insta stuff during the week. I've never seen her smile as much. I've never seen her look as happy. I've never seen her look as relaxed. And as I said, I've watched her play soccer when she was 15. I watched her play international soccer before she became a Finns boxer. She is in her moment. And the question is now, is this all because she's not going to box anymore, or what does it mean? And actually, somebody asked the question, obviously they took questions from the floor, and she was asked, which is a question that journalists don't ask often. And Katie, if you ever asked her anything about her private life, could get very prickly. But she was asked if she wanted to have kids. And
she handled it very deftly.
She handled it very deftly. A great answer. She said, I think I'd be a very intense parent to a kid. Can you imagine little 5-year-old Katie Jr. on a football field? I'm saying, come on now, work through the pain barrier. But thankfully, my husband, Sean, is the most laid-back, chill guy in the world. It's actually quite funny. I'm so intense and he's so laid-back. Opposites attract, I guess. And there's just plenty of nice little insights into her. She was asked, did she want another fight? And she didn't rule it out.
That's the other big question.
That's the other big question. And she doesn't rule it out. And she mentions Croke Park yet again, but she also mentions Vegas, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So, like, she hasn't fully closed the door there, even though she hasn't said yes or no. She hasn't fully closed the door. But what really interests me is that she's working with a young fighter called Tia May Ayton, a young fighter emerging from Brian Peters' stables, who's her Irish manager. And she describes her as the best female boxer I've ever seen. So there's a name to watch out for, Tia May Ayton, Ayton. It's a lovely piece, and I just think it's a very touching piece.
It is, and but the thing you touch on about, like, the next fight, that's what we all want to know. Because, like, maybe the ship has sailed on the Croke Park date. Which is such a pity.
And that's down to her own management, I believe, not Croke Park.
And if she never gets to fight there, it will be an awful pity, because I don't, like, she's extraordinarily popular with everybody in this country. Everybody, she has extraordinary appeal.
Respect.
People love her, and rightly so, for everything that she's done. She's such an understated trailblazer, and with no hubris in comparison to so many people in the fight game. So it'll be an awful pity if she doesn't get that, and that, the 3 Arena was her only fight here. I would love to see her have another fight, only if it's the right fight. Like, there's been talk about her fighting a UFC fighter.
Oh no,
and this
please,
kind of nonsense.
No more
don't
that craziness.
Go there. Just don't go there.
No, and that's exactly what she says.
Yeah.
Look at the quote
because
on there.
There's very few people. Who's she going to fight?
Yeah.
Like, we've done Serrano.
Yeah.
Cameron, Katie herself kind of points out that Cameron, hasn't really earned another shot at Katie.
That's when she actually uses that phrase, which is great. I like to see that.
And it's true, because, who is there for... There's no more worlds left to conquer for Katie, really.
Yeah. So the quote is, I don't think I need another fight, but I I do want another fight. It needs to be a fight that excites me.
Yeah.
So that's her line on it.
It's when you've reached the top, where do you go from then? It's such a difficult question for her. And she is kind of grappling with it, not in a very somber way or anything, but it's on her mind kind of.
And, you know, it must be informed by her life and where she is in her life now. Like, she talked about it on the Late that time. She talked about how it was a lovely phrase, I'm in a different season of my life now.
Yeah.
And how, you know, she has married. She has now 5 stepchildren, isn't it?
Has she? That many? Wow, I didn't know that.
And he had a grown family. His, you know, first wife had died, and there's a lot going on in her life now. So you wonder, will that kind of inform what's going on in terms of fighting and her possible return to the ring? But look, whatever she's done, there'll never be another one like her. Another athlete.
It's a lovely
never
piece.
mind
It's a well
woman.
word piece, yeah. And he says how affected she was by just the size of the crowd that were there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, she kind of
literally,
she
if
was
she
welling
turned
up by the time she arrived.
Yeah, she's actually the Lidl who sponsored the ladies football league, Gaelic football league. They always start the season with a press conference with some research and some big figures.
Oh, yeah.
And Taylor is speaking at that actually in 2 weeks' time, again Tuesday week, which again is a very unusual thing. I think what a lineup. Hannah Turl and Katie Taylor, I think, are 2 of the speakers at it. That'll be really interesting. But she's doing this kind of stuff that she wouldn't ever have done if she was in that full-time training. So she's definitely out of that at the moment.
Yeah.
But whether she'll go back into it, whether she wants to go back into it, I don't know. There's a great line that you have this little girl lives in council estate, a very poor area, and she has this dream she has no right to achieve.
Yeah. And it's so, you know, she willed women's boxing into the Olympics. Like, it's extraordinary when you look back, you know.
I always remember
your
her
mention of Hannah Tyrrell remind me of one of the, you know, such a good thing I read today.
There's another good piece
the
that
Evan
links
Talcey
with
piece
this.
about St. Bridget's, and he talked about when he was with Mick Bohan with the Dublin ladies, and he said he had to drive to Dublin twice weekly, leaving home at 3:30, not getting back until 1:30 the next morning, but the experience was invaluable. And he said there was never an excuse not to be at training. Hannah Tyrrell will be in the gym in DCU with a pram at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that's the one.
And it just shows you the dedication, like Hannah Tyrrell, another extraordinary athlete. Like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look, I think it's a very interesting period. Loads of people say this thing, oh, I wish she wouldn't box anymore, I don't want to see her get hit. I feel she has earned the right to do whatever she wants to do with her life. She's extraordinary.
Totally.
But I just do think I've never seen her look happier.
Yeah, true. And like I thought, I'm after the last Serrano fight or the one before, I thought I'm never going to second guess Katie again. Katie knows best, and you know, if she feels she's done, she's, as you say, exactly right, and she has the right to decide when she is done.
That piece that piece, Eve, that Orla mentioned there is a really good piece in the Sunday Indo, and it's with Evan Talty, and he's a name that'll be familiar to a lot of people who are involved in coaching in Ireland, Gaelic Games coaching. He's a coach's coach, if you like. He's big into coaching. It's a really good piece. He is involved today with St. Bridget's in the All Ireland Club final. Anthony Cunningham got him on board because he's worked with a lot of other teams, and one of the things that struck us both about the piece was that, like, he worked with the Clare ladies, the Galway ladies football, and then he ended up working with the Dublin ladies football team as well, and he uses examples of a lot of the women's teams to reference what he has learned most about the importance of coaching, but he's also a guy who really got into coaching quite young, and also got into coaching because he had somebody in his club who affected him greatly, and it was a guy called Murray in his home club in Clare. He also runs the family run a really interesting business, Irish Seaweeds, and he's trying to do all that and involved with coaching. But I think it's well worth piece. If you're interested in GA club and you're interested in coaching in the GA, it's a really good piece. And I love that line that he used about the Hannah Tyrrell one, because he said, you learn that culture is not something you write up on a wall.
That was
brilliant. You know, and this line, the old All Blacks line that we all get, he said it's not sweeping out the dressing rooms. That's not culture. Culture is doing what you say you're going to do and doing it every day and doing it consistently. And he said, if you look at what Mick Bohan would have preached in Dublin, the value of strong Dublin independent women, it's, he said he saw all of that when he worked in the Dublin women's backroom team, but it's something that he brings into coaching with them. But it's interesting, he was influenced by this amazing man in his own club, a guy called Patrick Murray, who went around the local primary schools coaching in Clare. and he was influenced by him. And now, because you see a lot online, and there's a lot of very good stuff online. I find with people who are interested in coaching GA in club level and coaching it right, and not the win at all cost thing. I think, is that in this as well, or did I come across it somewhere else? Came across that piece somewhere else this week where someone was saying, when I was younger, I thought winning, I modelled myself on Roy Keane and people like that. I thought win at all costs, but now that I'm older, that's not how I approach things. And I think maybe with age, your mind does change about the way you coach, and the way you play sport and the way you coach. But he has that perspective in it, and it's really interesting in what we're talking about today about women's sport, that a lot of what he learned, interestingly, he's learned from women's Gaelic.
Yeah. And just on the previous page is one you pointed me to, which was, as soon as this is a sports newspaper slot, we'll indulge ourselves for a second.
Oh, yeah.
About Dennis Hurley.
Oh, Dennis Hurley, yeah.
You showed this to me. He's the sports reporter with the Echo. And at the Kilbrittain game yesterday, it was his brother James started fullback, and his brother-in-law was the manager. And he was up in the press box writing his match report.
Away, right, in match report. Because everyone looked at the Kilbrittain game yesterday and saw the walls, the two brothers, the walls. But here you have an example, and we know what it's like as a sports reporter. You have to be independent sometimes. Your brother's playing fullback, your brother-in-law is managing the team, and you have to go up and write the match report on a game that is as thrilling as that. But he was saying,
and meaningful.
We know what it's like. Sometimes we say, would you not prefer to be down there? And he said, you can't, as a sports reporter, you can't enjoy sport the same way, because you have to be objective. You have to have a neutral stance. And he also says, I can stay calmer watching it from above. And also, he said, I'm afraid I'll jinx it if I went as a fan and not as I am doing my job. Dennis is a very good sports writer. And also the match reports yesterday do point out that, it was quite controversial the sending off of Andy Kilcullen for Easky, and Easky would have their issues yesterday with that decision, because it was a harsh decision, definitely
questionable, wasn't it?
And I know for a fact that Dennis Hurley, and the kind of reporter he is, he would have made that point in his match report as well, because he's a very good journalist. But that's the joy of being a sports reporter sometimes, is that you just have to do the job, even when that craziness is happening around you.
Yeah, so there's more, of course, Gaelic Games action on today, which will have lots on the show throughout the evening. Is there any other last kind of little bits and bobs you wanted to mention?
Well, there's a couple of pieces. Don McLean in the Sunday Times is just interesting on, obviously he's a great horse racing writer, but he's interesting on the fact that we may be seeing a little bit of return from English trainers in the jump game. Because he points out that Dan Skelton is going so well at the moment, and he's not the only one. Ollie Murphy is going well. Is it Ben? I'm trying to think of his name, the third guy. But he's just pointing out that, the way Cheltenham has nearly become a procession for the Irish, and it's not. I think it loses a bit of its value when it's been so dominated by Irish horses.
You need
it's this thing of you need jeopardy, you need competition, you need proper real life rivalries. So if English trainers are now getting a bit more success, and he points out that they are this season already, then it may make for a more interesting national hunt season.
Yeah, and maybe they've all, there's definitely a feeling in England that they have got a better, they're definitely going to put it up to the Irish horses. They don't feel Cheltenham will be anything like what it's been in the last few years. But you can see as well, like Gordon Elliott was very successful over Christmas.
Great Fairhouse.
He's been in,
Leopardstown,
he's been in incredible form. And Ben Pauling was the one you were talking about.
Ben Pauling,
the jukebox man winning the King George.
So
there's been some a lot of sharing around in comparison to previous years where you would have seen a lot of Willie Mullins, though he always comes later in the season. You will always see that. He'll finish off the season,
And the other thing I like, something that I really liked, it's in the Sunday Times, they do this thing on the back page of, this eat, drunk, drink, love. It's one of these Q&As, this quick fire, quick round ones. But champion jump jockey, Sean Bowen, I don't know whether any of you saw this, but these classic questions: what do you want to eat, who do you want, your dream dinner party. I love this guy's attitude. His dream party, I'm not sitting down with random famous strangers, it would be too awkward, so it's a family occasion. So he goes through them all: his mother Karen, His father, who's a trainer as well, who moans too much. His brother, who is a trainer as well and can really put away the food. His other brother, James, and his wife, because she likes a nice restaurant. And then it's loads of other stuff. This guy's never drunk, so he doesn't have it. He doesn't have a worst hangover. Now, I'm not a film person. They go on too long, and I'm impatient. I go to the cinema and I fall asleep. I'd say we can all identify with that. I think this is a sports guy I can identify with. And also the one I really like is his favourite album. I don't listen to albums because there are always a few dud tracks on each one. So it's a very modern
skiing.
He's skiing.
This is crazy.
And, well, actually, that's really surprising because jockeys usually won't go skiing in case they get injured. That is his thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I kind of I like that because it was a very different kind of one that you get in those usual classic answers that you get to all those.
Nice to get a glimpse.
Exactly. Brilliant. All right, I think that's all we have time for today. Orla and Cliona, thank you so much for joining me.